Hello everyone, welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. At the time of recording, I just want to be known I've just had my butt handed to me by Claver in a friendly, and so with that a little bit of grain of salt, I am not the world's best Wargame player, or really anything close, but here we have a game between Fierce Apache and Most Toast, and I was backseating a little bit from Apache's side of it, but we wanted to do a bit of a replay review, so the reason I gave you that preface is because I don't want this to be construed as, yes, I know all the answers all the time. I clearly don't. However, I think because usually these days I'm sitting around sort of Colonel Briggen sort of area, a second lieutenant sort of game, I might be able to really do something in terms of commentary here. So plus I think there were some things I wanted to sort of talk to Apache about after the fact, and it can be a little bit frustrating to hear a lot of things about the game that you just played. So yeah, we've had a little bit of time. This will go up on the channel about 16 hours after this game was played. So here's the first real thing. In terms of your opener, this is a Scandi mech deck, right? And there are three main areas of interest that we have here: Bravo/Alpha, Square Forest, and Triangle Forest. And it's really crucial to get control of this section, which is why a lot of people open here from Blue's side, and that's not what Apache decided to do, which is fine. However, I think there's some issues with how this was done, and the opener is always chaotic, but there's a single AMX-10 RC here, and to be quite frank, against what's over in this section, I think this should lose. It's just that you have the M41A1s behind the boxes, you move the boxes up, you get the AMX-10 RC shooting, and then you fire back at the 10RC. It has very fragile armor. You can really do a lot of damage. What was really nice is that these Urks died, the automatic was there to take out the helicopter. This is great, except there are two mortars right here, and very little smoke. And what's happening is a 2A1 is sitting there basically taking pot shots at the 103D's 15 front armor with its 18 AP power gun. It can pen at max range, it won't really kill in one shot. But the other thing too is these Sturbs. So when units are grouped, incoming fire tends to alternate between the two targets, unless there's a significant distance between them and what's shooting at them. And in this case, that 2A1's pounding into the front Sturb every single time. So a little bit of a mixed bag on the first engagement, a lot of good, a lot of maybe not as good as it could have been, but certainly not the end of the world. That automatic dying is what makes it bad. But I don't know, I think this is still very promising. We have a position in Bravo, there's a position in Square right here, and if this section in Triangle can be retaken, that's very nice, because one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, sorry if you just heard the cat squeal in the background, just going a little nuts, is that Hotel is not capped. So to bring or not to bring a second CV is a really, really tough question. The trade-offs are basically, you get much more meat in your opener, which we have seen here from Red, compared to starting with an additional CV. This is about 105 points or so, which is 10% of your opener just not active at the front. Yeah, this is very nice. Very, very nice. See, like this almost works. It so almost works. It's a little bit heartbreaking here, but the nice thing that Blue has going for him right now, that Apache is going for him, is Cap and Charlie, ticking +2, while Red is sort of sitting over there not having that cap, and the fight's gone well enough that Red's deciding to reinforce. So you see this, and when you see this as Blue, the first thing you should do is bring in more reinforcements on the ground and apply a lot of pressure. So the sort of predictable response from Red, what you'd expect the Red player to do, is to bring in more on the ground here and push in Golf. And I say that because usually Alpha Bravo side openers would have already engaged by now, and there was a lot of meat here. Clearly Red wanted Triangle, has Triangle by the way. At least kind of. And so from Blue's perspective, when you see your opponent hasn't capped this +2, start probing. So just send the Gewehrman up a little bit. The Panzergren will engage, the Gewehrman will probably be very damaged, they'll come back down, but at least then you're making Red think about this side as well, and that can be a very good thing. Now, in this exact case, maybe not, but I don't know, this is a little bit of a weird one, because if we look, Red is playing Eurocore Mech, Martyr 1A3s, high veterancy, Mistral, high veterancy. I didn't know they actually still got the Urk in No, do they? Yeah, it's available on Mac. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so this is an uncommon deck, and you have to recognize that during the game as well, which when we were backseating, when I was backseating you during this game, we didn't really talk about it. And it's definitely something that you should be looking for. So sort of the first thing you look for when you make contact is, okay, what nationality, what coalition, and then secondly, what spec, if you can tell. And the best way to tell is off infantry, because starting infantry that's at elite for something like shock shouldn't be possible outside of a spec, but if it was Moto, then you wouldn't have had the 281. So that's sort of how you narrow down, okay, this is a spec deck, it's a mech deck, what can we do about that? Another thing too, and I joke about this sometimes, but I actually do kind of mean it, M41A1s are really good anti-helicopter stuff for light helicopters like the Gazelle Canon. M41s right here, and this thing is dead. It's actually really goofy. It'll come up a little bit closer, it'll get stunned by double browning, this thing has 4 strength, and it'll die. But another thing we can see, so the Sturv that was reinforced in is getting some nice shots, but because it came in here into square instead of going up into Foxtrot, there's not really a lot here to help this push succeed. So there's a Martyr 2 that's just sort of wiping those out. And in isolation, it's not horrible, it's only 20 points, but this would have been a time that I think is a reasonable exception to the always keep these tanks double stacked rule, which is you have good protection, very nice smoke right here, and I actually think that might have been Red 4 smoke, I'm not really sure. Goodness gracious. But you need that push to come in and take triangle, because this is such a huge priority. I can't stress it enough. This makes or breaks the match oftentimes, because you get into the middle of the game, things sort of get settled down. The intention from blue was not to push this section of town, and so there's a counter cap in Bravo, there's a counter cap in Golf, there's a counter cap in Fox, and red wins on +1, even with the lead here that blue has so far. It's 137 points, getting close to 150, and that means that, well, you have 10 minutes of +1 tick that red can do in order to tie with you, and another 10, I mean, 300 to 150, right? So red does have to buy a CV soon, though he's basically handing you rope, right? Most players by now would not have let this be. Most players from red would have bought a CV instead of this peace rind. They would have bought a CV instead of some of the stuff on the ground, and that would have been good for you as well, because you're ahead on trading by a lot, but it would have made it a bit more challenging for tick and made position a little bit more important. The other thing too is that this is a really dangerous position. So during the game, this was really frustrating, because the attack move on the Sturvs was supposed to have them go up, pot shot the Chasseur and the AMX 10P and the Martyr 1A3s, and what's happening is that they're moving up, they're getting into the fire, and they're auto retreating back, because the game says if I'm in fire, I back up. But there should be smoke here anyway, even without that, even without this sort of weird pathing that's going on right now. So I think the pick there with the peace run from red was a little bit of a mistake, and those mistakes add up. They cost position, they cost points and reinforcements. Those points take away from pushes on the directions. And the other thing too, yeah, here we have a Sturv. This attack, we discussed it a little bit after the game, but this attack at this point, ideally you have M41 somewhere over here, somewhere over here. You know that you're not going to take fire from the left-hand side. I'm a firm believer that you should go sort of this way, and the push that we eventually have goes to the right. And the reason that this is important is because of this section of forest right here. If you go into the game and you look at the line of sight tool for different things, and you have them back here and back here, what's really goofy, when there's forest in the way, units won't be able to shoot at their maximum range because the forest sort of prohibits this. It's a little bit goofy. I'm not sure the exact values or anything like that, or even if there is a standardization on this. It seems really feature specific for individual sections of woodline and hedgerows. But you come up this way, and the reason is then your tank, then your stuff is engaging part of the enemy at a time. You deny them their ability to use their units that are farther back, like the 2A1, like the 10 RCs, because when they look through here, they're looking through an entire section of forest. And you kill the Martyr, then you kill the AMXs, then you kill the 2A1. You make it into an engagement of one-on-ones instead of, well, with your fire support and chaff, instead of taking on all of this at once. So, from this position right now, I like the automatic buy. Yeah, and I'm 45s at pace. There's really not been a lot going on here, which I guess is fine. I would have liked to see more aggression, and now we have buys coming into Foxtrot, which is good, and I understand, wanting to have more stuff here as well, but this position is often shelled, and what you need to know about defending this position, which if your intention is just to defend, then that's a very specific thing, you need basically 2 shocks and 2 CV9030Ns, and you keep the shocks right here, and you keep the CV9030Ns right behind them, and Square Forest is impenetrable to most things other than, like, I don't know, somebody spends 400 points at you, it's going to be a little rough. Somebody hits it with an Uragan, that's going to be a little bit rough, but it's reasonably defensive without over-investing, and right now we have CV9030Ns, Sturv, there was a second one as well, Automatic, Stormer, there's a lot of stuff here, and that delays pushes other places. The Automatic's 80 points, it's most of a minute worth of reinforcements other places, and now Red is getting really sort of into this mindset. Like, if we flip this around, this position from Red is actually, now it's pretty good for them, not for Blue, because Blue hasn't retaken this section yet. Red has it. Red can countercap in those 3 sections and ticket a +1 for 30 minutes, and all they need is 20 minutes of +1 to win. So if this gets into sort of like a World War I trench war type thing, that's very much in Red's favor. Now, let's watch this push because I want to put my money where my mouth is. First off, the 2A1 is already shooting, so these Dragoner and the boxes are going to take fire from the 2A1. You can't engage because your Sturvs are sort of over here. Peace Rhine damages 1, and now you're in a lot of trouble because the smoke as well. It takes a bit of practice to really be able to smoke your tanks accurately during a push. You have to sort of lead the duck a little bit and make sure that your shift cues on the mortar are very, very precise. Like, I mess this up all the time, so I get it, really I do. But can you see how this section, all of this stuff in the backline is engaging at once? And because of this section of woods, you're actually blocking off your own support. You have to come up all the way to here, and you can't even fire at everything. It's only stuff like the Martyr 2, and it's a little bit awkward, right? Like, we had all this chaff, we had all this space to go forward, and now we don't, because the first thing that's going to get shot is the Swedish tank, and really not anything else. So that's why I say, you come this way, you get your chaff unloaded sort of here, you have the tanks moving up laterally, and you squeeze them out of the forest from this side as well. Now, really good cluster bomber. That was really clutch. Killing the 2A1 basically revenges most of the losses that were taken here, because this tank did survive, and because most of the losses were just lines. That sort of evens it out, but it's not for free. And this is something I've been struggling with too as well, especially when I play coalitions I'm still trying to learn, like Dutch-German Corps. It's been a struggle for me to have a forward presence with that coalition, which is sort of the same thing that we're having right now. We have a struggle to have a forward presence. Plane buys, even if they even the kill death, they're not free. So if there's 100 points on the ground, I'm behind by 100 points, I buy a 115 point plane, I go and I kill it. Okay, well, I'm no longer behind 100 points on trading, but I'm behind 115 points now on board presence instead of 100. I've just put myself more behind on board, which is really goofy. Like, it's strange, because you have that satisfaction of, okay, I brought in this plane, I got this kill, it's worth it, it paid for itself, and it's not dead, right? So I can maybe do it again, but that's not a guarantee, and it's not right now. And right now is worth so much in Wargame, because every minute is another 2A1, every minute is another 100 and some, I think it's like 105 points. So it's a 2A1 and, well, half a reservist, I guess. So the time value of points is huge, 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 huge. 5,000 some points in a 40-minute game, and that 100-point swing starts to look a little bit less impactful than board position at the time. So if the plane gets you board position, if the plane gets you a kill that really does mess with your opponent just that much, maybe then it's worthwhile. But it's a big maybe. So yeah, 100% I think this was a good kill, but it doesn't solve your problem. And we can actually see that right now. You still have the same problem, right? There's still a 2A1, there's still a lot of stuff here. There's actually another replacement 2A1 because it's been a minute. It's been over a minute, and that guy was on the way. And this is the sort of reason why during the game, even when stuff was going kind of wrong here in square, I was telling you, hey, you need to retake triangle, and you need to retake triangle now, because as time goes on, this just gets harder. it's a little bit demoralizing. It's a little bit risky, right? Like, you have to take that risk and you have to succeed, because if you don't, you're behind now. +1 on tick. The strip BB90 is a good buy. Bravo's fine to place it in there. Honestly, Fox on this side would be fine to place it in there because it's really hard to push on this side. There also needs to be ATGMs on this side, and again, M41A1's around here by now, because basically everybody captain or above would be squeezing you out of Foxtrot forever, because you have something like a recon tank here, you have an ATGM, more recon, you have some infantry here, and if the focus of red is to win by squeezing this section of Fox, which is not how I play the top side of the map, it's not really my style to do this sort of push, but if that is the style that red's going for, 100% they're going to do that. And then how do you advance when you have all that stuff behind you, right? So that's what this guy seems to be doing. He seems to want to win that way. Maybe not the cleanest opener I've seen for that style of play, but it's definitely going there. And the other thing too, we've been sitting here now for a while without a big push, and Scandimech can gather pushes really quickly for very cheap. Your functional tank is 90 points. This is why I bring Militia, by the way. So, we've gone back and forth, Apache and I, on deck building, because he's using a modified version of the Scandimech deck that I use to make it to Brigadier General. It's a deck I have a lot of confidence in, but one big difference that doesn't seem like a big difference until it is I bring LHV, I bring Militia, and the whole reason I bring Militia is because right now when this push is gathering, that's 10, 20, 30 points that I've saved, which is another 3 Militia. So I have a lot more meat in front of my push, or it's 2 15-point tanks. I get more fire support for something like that. It really isn't that expensive either. So that's sort of the accounting in there. That's why I'm a big advocate of those reservists in this deck. I think it just brings a lot to the table. So, yeah, well, I hope you don't think I'm just yelling in your ear for this whole time. Like, I know it's an interesting thing. So Apache and I, he was one of the first people I ever played in multiplayer in Wargame, and we just have hung out since, and it's been an interesting thing. Like, oh man, this is good. Actually, let's watch this. We'll save the sob story for later. TLDR, cool guy. So this defense is really beautiful. So the M41A1's shooting in from the side, Storm Engineer here. The issue with it is it needs more strength on the infantry, because the Storm Engineer are great until they're dead, right? So the punch that they have for the cost is very nice. I think it would have been, if we had had cleaner buys between Golf and Foxtrot, I think there could have been space for another set of Dragoner, maybe another set of Gewehrman. And the other thing too is that the NM135s are really good fire support, but here in the middle of the deep woods they're not. And you might think to yourself, okay, well, this guy comes down here, he gets shot, but the NM can't really engage until you micro it anyway, which, as we've seen, doesn't happen off the bat. And you only really need one, because this Gewehrman position is very nice. His infantry comes down into the open, it's not getting damage reduction, and there you go. But you don't need a ton of stuff to hold there. This is like a flexible thing, and sometimes you'll get pushed down through it by flame infantry or something like that, and you sweep back in from the left and from the right. You squeeze their infantry from that end, and it's a good flexible response. But I mean, that was very costly for red, and this whole game we've had some pretty decent trades. It just needs to be translated into confident gameplay. It needs to be translated into forward motion, aggression, honestly, but well thought through aggression, and a lot of that comes from buys. So in the meantime, we talked about how there was already sort of an overinvestment here. There's been more Gewehrman and M135 since, and I think I said to you during to get regulars here, and this was the answer, but this is a waste of 10 points. And there's a couple of instances like that sort of across the front that are slowing you down. And that really just comes from practice with the deck, practice forming a push with the deck. Experience doing those sorts of things will make all of this run a little bit smoother. You'd be amazed. Mech decks can gather pushes out of 300 points maybe, which is 3 minutes of income. But where on this map do we see that concentration? Only right here, pretty much. Maybe you could argue here it's kind of close. This is 180, then there's 30, 60, 90, 270 total, plus the M41, 280. All of this prep, we've been waiting for a push now for about 10 minutes or so, and there's not even 3 minutes of income here in the woods. So the question is why? And some of that came from, you know, the cap on Bravo, but only Bravo. That's about a minute and 10 seconds worth of income there. So where did the rest of it go? And some of it was into planes, some of it was into the beacon, which is a very nice thing. You're making your opponent really uncomfortable here. We took out a CV, well, sorry, not a CV. We took out a resupply, and that 2A1 therefore can't heal back up to 10. It's shaken, the morale is damaged. This is very nice. It just seems like... So, Apache, if you're listening to this, remember the game that we had a couple days back where you were playing a Mech 80 deck and I was playing, what was I playing? Commonwealth Marines, I think? I pushed you at the end of that game with Commonwealth Marines, and what I took to push you with were basically 4 double stack shock squads. That cost me about a little under 2 minutes worth of income. And with it, I stormed down here, cleared this. Well, I guess I had an M2 Wilk as well. But I cleared this section of wood, brought up a Wilk I had from earlier on, and killed your CV. That's the sort of short-term pressure that needs to be brought to bear here. And particularly on Bravo, we'll talk about this in a little bit. The counter cap on Bravo from the top side is super fragile. And there's a really nice way you can sort of go up, decap it, and then come back down. But let's take a look at this push while we're at it here, and the smoke is a little bit better, but you're using 3 mortars to do it, which does widen the smoke just a little bit, it's true, because of the dispersion on the shots, but tends not to be worthwhile, because you actually bought all of your mortars by the end of this game, and that's a lot of points invested. If that was maybe 2 mortars used separately, you would have had better placed smoke with less supply cost being used. Now, we have a bit more of a left side push. MX-10RC can't really shoot anything because of the M113Gs, and yeah, there's less stuff here, so it is a little bit less fair because there aren't recon tanks back on that side. Excuse me, but we can already see how much of a bad situation a couple changes put this guy in. The ATGM that should have been on this side now is. It's shooting at this 2A1, making him retreat. The SCRVs are going up, they can take an engagement on their own with the Leopard 2A1 on this side, and really it's an awkward thing for your opponent to defend against, because those Milans don't even have line of sight right now because of the trees, right? So they're shooting at boxes instead. This is the sort of distraction that you want. So, only comment is it's a little bit of a trade-off here. Your smoke protected your tanks, but they cost you the opportunity to kill that 2A1. It's a little bit less than ideal. Another thing too, I commented a couple weeks ago on a game of my own where my long-range anti-air got systematically wiped out. IHawks fire, they move. Fire, move, fire, move. And about the only thing that could have gone better here is if the 2A1 died, I think. And then, again, maybe 4 15-point tanks and another double stack of infantry, and this whole section is gone. Which really isn't that much. It's about a minute and 15, and it's been 3 minutes and 20 seconds since we started talking about that. So where's the 300 points? And some of it's in the strip UV90, some of it's in the automatic that's coming up here, some of it was floating at the time because you're microing, which, yeah, I get that it's a little bit tough, particularly in mech decks when you have large numbers of low-cost units that you're bringing in to do that with, but I think it would have added a lot of fuel to this push, and Red didn't do an amazing job defending here. His 2A1s are sort of outmatched, one has been lost, the other one on 1 HP here, and he never brought in enough reinforcements because of the push on this side, which is a mistake from your opponent. So he's bringing in more stuff here, there's more Chasseur, there's more Chasseur back here as well, there was the failed push on Bravo, and that is telling you, okay, Red's bringing stuff in, he's losing them. It means that he's also replacing those losses, more than likely. It means that there's an opportunity in Foxtrot that might not always be there. So, a bit of a hasty block 5. I think we all got a little bit hasty at this point. Mistral actually got the kill with that tap right there, but there's an immediate replacement here, and this is sort of what's to be expected. So that sort of strike starts a countdown timer before some replacement is there, almost always in this late game. Pretty much regardless of rank, by the way. People, when they have something die like that on the flank, they'll almost always buy a replacement right away. So, yeah, it's a little bit goofy. Another thing, too, this Milan team carries 12, but the RBS only carry 8. So they require you to be even more on point than usual. Oh, that was brutal. That was a brutal shot. Even more on point than usual with resupply for the RBS. Okay, but I did say I talk about the Bravo push, and if you'll notice, this is a CV tank, the Leopard 1 CV tank, which I think is strictly inferior to taking the Leopard 2. It is cheaper, but the Leopard 2 is a lot more resilient. You get 3 top armor, much thicker front armor as well. Especially when someone takes the Leopard 1, but when there's Jeep CVs or even infantry CVs, what you do in order to decap this zone, which pushing this, even if you push it in retreat, can get you a lot of points on a stuck-in paddy field like this one, where 250 points to 90 is nice, but nobody's ticking right now. What you do is you take double STRF 9040, and then which means double Stormer, so that right there is 90 points. You take maybe 2 double stacks of Dragoner, which is another 60 points, so we're up to 150. You take maybe 1 tank behind it, so that's another 90. So we're up to 240. And that's 2 minutes and some 20 seconds worth of income. And what you do is you smoke off right here as you push first the Dragoner, then the Martyr 2s, and the S-Tank behind it. And what happens is you unload when you're at the top and sort of get going forward, and all of his fire support will fire in the boxes first, the Dragoner second, and when they do, close range Martyr 2s, very, very deadly. Close range Swedish tank, very deadly, very high rate of fire. If that's not doing it for you, bring another tank. And what you'll do is you'll pop up, even the Leopard 1 will engage. Its tank gun is on, it has line of sight right here. It'll turn and engage and you'll kill it, because your Swedish tank will target this and it'll die. And then that costs your opponent 145 points in this case, and you're ticking +1, which is putting the nail in the coffin of a game where you're already up 249 to 90. So that's another option here. Now, this works a lot better. The STRVs are still alive. There wasn't any reinforcement from Red because Red was reinforcing on the other side of the field. And now, finally, we are getting through here, which is very nice. It's, I don't know, it's a little awkward doing this with 15 minutes left in the game. There's a replacement AMX-10, and this is something, too, where a little bit better micro on the tanks, I think, would have been kind of good here, because you can see this. It is spotted, solid bar. Well, actually, can you? Well, now you can't, because that M41 died. But immediate recognition of where it was, oh yeah, and the Swedish tank's coming over here to fire, and it's dead. Instead, it gave you a little bit of a dodge, and there's not that much you can do. But yeah, I mean, this is looking really nice. I actually think the NM135 is great for this. The earlier push, a little bit of government in NM135, I think would have been perfect. Excuse me. Sorry. I think I might be getting a little bit sick. Alright. Automatic, sometimes that'll happen. ECR is really long range. Shame it wasn't killed afterward, but I mean, when your opponent's relying on planes to slow you down, as I was against Claver right before recording this, it's usually a bad thing for them as it was a bad thing for me. So, I hope you can see, sort of as we're looking through this replay, how just a little bit more each time would have made the difference. Just a little, not even all that much. I also do want to say, I think right now the 15-point tanks are being a little underused. They bring, for 15 points, 5 frontal armor, and a gun with an actual AP power that's non-zero, which is very nice. So they add a lot of meat to this push. They can actually kill the 10 RC, by the way, so like, if you had 2 more going here, 2 more going sort of like here, you get counter shots of the 10 RC, that's dead now, you're clearing this out, you're clearing out the 1390, and then they sweep up on this side, and they got fire short range at everything in this section of trees. It can be very, very good indeed. I do apologize, by the way, I didn't suggest that you try this push during, because I didn't want to, I don't know, I mean, there are limits to backseating, right? And some of those limits are when you're saying so many different things that it's actually starting to hurt instead of help. So the good patient gameplay was something I was completely fine with being the norm here. Man. Oh man, I miss playing Scandi. I miss my NM135s. I'm trying to learn DGC, I'm trying to play less spec decks, less mech in particular. But holy cow, I love these guys. You wouldn't necessarily think it, because they have 1 front armor, which is kind of bad, but you know, it's the same autocannon as on the French Vav. It gets really good kills when it can. When it can shoot. And this is, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, we lost 1, but the Chasseur 85 are 15 points, and there's not a lot of casualties here as well. Another thing too, and I made this comment after watching the game that you played after this, Falscom Jaeger 90 in the helicopters give Scandi Mech so much speed on the ground, so much punch on the ground as well, that it really is incredible. It's really hard to describe how instrumental that particular unit is to this deck working properly, in my opinion at least. And they're coming out now in part because we were talking in chat, you said, okay, I don't really know what to do, and I said get falls. The reason I said get falls is because those falls can pop up here, high AP punch anything short range if necessary, or they'll just clear out reservists like it's nobody's business. They'll clear out Chasseur like it's nobody's business, and if they do actually get through, that Edix will make very short work of any armor up on the top. And if we look right now, there's just a couple reservists in Chasseur, and I mean, the 10Ps are a little bit scary here, 3 front armor and an autocannon, but there's really not that much here. So this is sort of one of those opportunities where you have to go, okay, let me see if I can make something happen, and if it's not going to be up around this side, maybe it's through the forest here. I actually recommend you do both at once, because why not? Right, you take your Gewehrman, you take your Dragoner, and you take Fallskirmjäger 90 on the low ground, you take 300 points worth of mechanized units and tanks on the left side, you pop up from here, you go up here, and they're going, okay, crap, well I gotta rotate something to get rid of the stuff in the woods, and all of that's dying. Right, and with good smoke, that can be even more impactful. So, I don't want you to think that I'm going to spend the entire time saying, hey, this could have been a lot better. You played this game very, very well. You're ticking +1 right now because of the counter cap here, the cap on golf, the cap on fox. You're doing that because you've been up on trading. And even despite 3 failed pushes, you're up on trading. I'm never up on trading when I fail a push 3 times. So that's something to be proud of. It's good play. It's, you know, it's a good game, man. It's nicely done. And you should look at this game and think, okay, second lieutenant to second lieutenant, and where it counted, I got some good stuff down. Now, the next thing to do, honestly, is to do it without me, which is a little bit paradoxical because, you know, I'm trying to do some small rendition of what was done for me by Jellyman, by Osama, by Quicksilver, by the people who taught me how to play 1v1s, even with all the struggles that I still have with it. So I'm supposed to help you. But I think a large portion of that, in particular, is confidence. And I know it's easy to say and it's hard to have. By the way, this was a bit of a dick move, but, you know, this is something where the NM45 is so cheap. I know there was one here, there was one over here. There's no reason not to have like 2 or, well, 4 might be a little bit overblown, but people will buy Gepard A2s for base defense that's 65 points. This right here is 60 points. You'll actually have more DPS from those until they start dying, because they are more fragile. One dies, the rest get panicked. But it's 4 guns. It's very nice. Oh man. Nice block 5 break. Oh, beautiful. Spacious skies, amber waves of grain. Nice, nice, nice. Yeah. This is great. And it actually does show the power of going around this side as well, because even with all that stuff dead, how can you push? There's a Milan, there's Hussards, there's the 10RC, 10P. This section needs to have been cleared a while before, just by M41A1s and a little bit of infantry behind it, and if anything out there is armored, well, it'll probably die to the M41s if it's light. And if it doesn't, you have things like the Phoenix, you have other options available, a really good Scandinavian air tab, which is just frankly busted. Another thing to keep the beacon firing, so especially if there's a counter cap here, if you're beacanning this the whole game and you do those pushes, like, this is, I much prefer to fight from the lower side of Bravo exactly for this reason, because even if you're getting shelled here, you have a lot of forest. You can be over here, you can be like back on this side, you can be over on this side. If you're on top side, everyone funnels in right here, because what other option do you have? You can put a couple of things there, maybe. You can have some fire support from here, which you should, and this guy does, although the Deccan's group should be a little bit farther forward because they have pretty short range for how long that is. Anyway, your beacon shooting in here will almost always either get kills or certainly damage things, and if it doesn't, shift it back. Because if people have played a lot and they don't want to be right here, well, that's because they usually keep their staging ground here and they push forward responsively if they see something coming in. So, beaconning in this area is really, it's worth a lot, quite often. So this is a bit of a problem, and what we can see is that everything here has been flattened by artillery. Now, you might think this sort of disproves what I said earlier for how to hold this, But I'd like to point out there's 6 minutes left in the game, and until this point, there was really nothing that could have gotten that stuff done. So, by the way, the issue here, automatic's far too far forward. Let them come to you. Line of sight blocker will, your line of sight will be blocked by the woods anyway. Why give them a longer range on you by going up to the forest edge? Just let them come in, turn the gun on. You'll shoot, even if all you can see is like right here. That's fine, the automatic will belt anything that gets that close with higher than average AP power as well, because it's kinetic and it scales and it's a busted unit. So much fun to play, honestly. The other thing here is we've had the falls right there for a little while. These guys should be going up, because let's be honest, even unsupported, they might well get through here just fine. And if they don't, if they're in tatters, it'll be a relatively equal trade in a game where you've been trading ahead for a very long time. So I think it's 100% worth it. Now, with 5 minutes left, your opponent's taking +1. This is actually not an issue. So you're ahead right now by 230 points, which at 15 points a minute, a +1, would require him to have, let's see, that's 10, roughly 15 minutes worth of tick in order to be on like the tide of victory sort of scale. He has a third of that, not even. So +1's not going to get him there. +2 is going to be a lot scarier. 30 points a minute. Yeah, I mean, it's still not enough. He gets 150 points here, but it does make it a lot closer. Your opponent now needs a +3, and in the last couple minutes of the game, that really does change how you can play it, because you know your opponent needs a +3. The other thing too about this, when we saw that fight earlier, you brought reinforcements in, and they're just in the nick of time, because what happened is you saw this as weak, your opponent saw this as weak, he pushes, you reinforce, and it would have been nice to have a little bit of reinforcements in response to the shelling, but I understand why you might not want to do that. It kind of does hurt a little bit to say, okay, everything here died to 10 HE artillery, let's do it again for free, but this is pretty well-timed reinforcements, really well-timed. It is a little bit comical that reservists land both their LRACs here, but, oh, did they? How did this thing, oh no, that was the box, maybe? Wait, shouldn't be able to do that. Anyway, it's a little bit unfortunate that died. This is why at the time I said just leave it there and buy another. The reason is, retreating out of here is very hard to do while staying alive. We've seen peace Rhines earlier from your opponent. That Urk 90 is going to run up here and side shot your CV when it's sort of in the open. If you move it out, oftentimes it's dead anyway. So just take the tick and get a replacement, because if your thing lives, okay, if in the last 3 minutes of the game a replacement CV, even if it's near your base, is not a bad thing, because people heal a rush. And if it does die, well, okay, now we have one, we'll go up here, we'll cap this, it'll be a good time, we'll lock him back down to a +1, and, you know, there we go. So really the key takeaways I think here are, one, you did a nice job. You beat a second lieutenant, and that's a good thing. The other takeaways are a couple of little differences would have made a huge impact, and that's so much of this game, honestly. Like I've been fighting Claver a lot on purpose lately because he's a better player than I am, and I can learn a lot from him, but some of the things in those games are really frustrating to see because there's such small differences, and they win the game, or they, well, for me, lose the game, right? And I think a little bit of small differences here would have made a lot of change. One, making more cohesive task forces for pushes. Two, doing those pushes at the moment where it's necessary, where it matters, where it makes a big improvement, where it moves the board in your favor. And three, confidence and aggression. We're going to see when we get to the kills deaths here, you were ahead, I think, something like 3,000 some to 2,000 some, nearly 1,000 points ahead on kills, and you can see it on the map. Look at the red versus blue here. He's very thin in Golf. He's very thin in Foxtrot. Even here in Alpha Bravo, there's not a lot of stuff. It's reservist and it's cheap spam, and then it's command tank. Like, you have so much more here. And I kind of feel like Palpatine saying you have hate, you have anger, but you don't use them. Like, use them, man. Shove him. Get the advantage on the ground. Count those points if you have to, which can be annoying, but it's necessary. Know that you're ahead on trading, and take ground, because this is Conquest. There is no way that somebody down 1,000 points on trading to you should have this presence. The reason they do is because they played for position, And, you know, that wins games. Position wins games. If you and I are at a position advantageous to me for conquest points, and we spend the rest of the game, the next 40 minutes, trading slightly against me, but you can't move forward, that's worth it. The risk I run there is if you could eventually have enough points where you can just move forward anyway, but, you know, that's a risk I'm willing to take. Another thing too, when you get to about the 6 or so minute mark, especially if you realize that you're playing as a mech deck, and especially against a mech deck, the last 2-ish minutes, maybe even closer to 3, mech stuff that gets called in does not make it to the front line. So take all your stuff and push it, like the 5-ish minute mark, maybe 6-ish minute mark, and the reinforcements that are called in response will be the last reinforcements your opponent's going to be able to bring to get to the front line, short of something that is either wheeled, so not in a mech deck really, other than the Urks I think are wheeled, or a paratrooper, and that can be really impactful. So kills losses 3130 to 2335, not quite 1,000, more like 800 or so point difference here, but still it's a very wide gap. 330 to 216, solid win. I think a couple of changes. This could have been over on conquest points much earlier, maybe 10 minutes or so earlier. So we prevent that cap in Foxtrot on the side, and we shove up onto the forest on the right hand side, kill the CV, retreat back, and you end up on trading there too, right? So your opponent has to buy another CV, that's fewer points on the ground. That makes everything else more successful as well. Unfortunately, no kills losses here today, as this was done in the neutral perspective, which I know not everyone's a fan of, but you know, I gotta say, Apache has been there playing Wargame with me since the channel started, pretty much, if not before, and it's been a real pleasure to play games with you along that time, and I hope you find this helpful, man. This is it's good, it's nice to watch, it's nice to see, and I really enjoy watching you play these 1v1 games and watching you take home a W, so I hope this has been entertaining. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you all for hanging around. And if you like the channel, please don't hesitate to leave a like, share, subscribe, all that YouTuber nonsense. And we'll have another game for you shortly.